Rain pounded against my apartment windows like angry fists, matching the frantic rhythm of my heartbeat as I paced back and forth across my tiny living room. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the shabby furniture and stack of elementary school papers I should have been grading. I peered through the blinds for the fifth time in 20 minutes, my breath catching at the sight of the familiar blue sedan parked across the street. Jake was out there watching, waiting. I could feel his eyes on me even through the storm. My hands trembled as I picked up my phone, desperation clawing at my throat. Liz had texted yesterday with her new number after losing her phone, and right now she was the only person I could turn to. I typed frantically, my thumb slipping on the screen. Jake found me again. He slashed my tires at school today, left another note saying I belonged to him. He's watching my apartment right now. I'm scared, Liz. I think he might actually hurt me this time. I hit send and sank down onto my worn couch, wrapping my arms around myself as if I could physically hold the fear at bay. 3 years since I left him, 3 years of peace shattered by his release from jail last month. The restraining order was just a piece of paper that meant nothing to a man who had promised to make me pay for testifying against him. My phone buzzed in my hand, and I snatched it up, relief washing over me at the quick response. But the words on the screen made my blood run cold. Who is this Jake? Where are you right now? Not Liz, definitely not Liz. The number looked similar but off by just one digit. My fingers hovered over the keypad, unsure how to respond. I started to type an apology for the wrong number when another message appeared. Don't move. Stay away from the windows. I need your address. Fear closed around my throat like a vice. Who was this person? How had a desperate plea for help sent to the wrong number turned into commands from a stranger? I started to block the number when a third message appeared. I can help you with your Jake problem, permanently. No police, no questions. Just tell me where you are. Against every rational thought screaming in my head, I found myself typing my address. 27 Oakwood Avenue, apartment 3B. The response was immediate and chilling. Stay inside, lock your doors. I'm coming for you. From now on, you're mine. I stared at the screen, my apartment suddenly feeling smaller, the storm outside growing fiercer. What had I just done? And who exactly had I just invited into my life? And now please stop and subscribe to my channel. Every subscriber brings me closer to 1,000, which helps me keep these stories alive and coming your way. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like it and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far these tales travel across the world. Now let's continue. The minutes crawled by like hours as I paced my apartment, alternating between peering anxiously through the blinds at Jake's sedan and staring at my phone, wondering what insanity had possessed me to send my address to a complete stranger. The storm continued its assault outside, rain lashing against the windows as thunder rumbled overhead. Then I saw them, 3 identical black SUVs gliding to a stop directly in front of my building, their headlights cutting through the downpour like searchlights. My breath caught in my throat as 6 men emerged simultaneously, all wearing dark suits despite the rain, moving with a coordinated precision that sent chills down my spine. They spread out, scanning the street, the building, the parked cars. One of them looked directly at Jake's sedan, then spoke into what appeared to be a communication device on his wrist. I backed away from the window, my heart hammering against my ribs. What had I done? Who were these people? Before I could process what was happening, my building intercom buzzed, the harsh sound making me jump. I approached it cautiously, as if it might bite. When I pressed the speaker button, a deep voice with a slight accent responded, identifying himself as Dante Russo and requesting entry. I stood frozen, unable to speak, my mind racing with terrifying possibilities. The voice came again, more insistent this time, saying he was here about my Jake situation. I finally found my voice, thin and shaky, telling him I had made a mistake and he should leave. There was a pause before he spoke again, his words making my blood run cold. He knew exactly where Jake was, in the silver sedan across the street, watching my window right now. He described the car perfectly, even mentioning the dent in the passenger door. My apartment suddenly felt impossibly small, the walls closing in as I realized I was trapped between my obsessive ex outside and whatever dangerous men I had summoned with my mistaken text. The intercom buzzed again, more persistent. "I need you to let me in now, Mia," the voice said, using my name though I hadn't given it. "This isn't just about your safety anymore. Jake's involved with people who want me dead. He isn't just stalking you, he's using you as bait." The calm certainty in his voice sent ice through my veins. I glanced back at the window, at the rain-slicked street where both threats waited, and made my decision. With trembling fingers, I pressed the buzzer to unlock the main door, then retreated to the center of my living room, grabbing the baseball bat I kept beside the couch. I could hear footsteps in the hallway now, measured and unhurried. A firm knock sounded on my door, and I knew with absolute certainty that my life was about to change forever. I opened the door with the baseball bat still clutched in my shaking hands, immediately regretting my decision as three men filled the doorway, their presence seeming to suck all the oxygen from my tiny apartment. The leader stepped forward first, and I instinctively backed away, allowing them entry. He was tall, towering over me by at least a foot, with broad shoulders encased in a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my teacher's salary. His two companions immediately moved through my apartment, checking rooms, windows, closets with practiced efficiency, while I stood rooted to the spot, transfixed by the man before me. His face was all sharp angles, olive skin stretched over high cheekbones, a strong jaw darkened with 5 o'clock shadow, and eyes so intensely dark they appeared almost black in the dim light of my apartment. Those eyes missed nothing, scanning my face, the bat in my hands, the scattered evidence of my simple life, the stack of third-grade spelling tests, the mismatched furniture, the framed photo of my parents on the bookshelf. He introduced himself as Dante Russo, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through my chest. When I found my voice enough to ask who he really was and why he was here, his answer was frustratingly vague. Something about business interests in the city and mutual problems with Jake Ellis. My apartment felt impossibly small with these dangerous men inside, their expensive suits and subtle cologne a stark contrast to my teacher's salary existence. The two bodyguards positioned themselves at strategic points, one by the window watching the street below, the other near the door, both with barely concealed weapons visible beneath their jackets. The surreal confrontation was interrupted by the shrill ring of my phone. The caller ID flashed Jake's name, and before I could react, Dante plucked the device from my hand. He answered it with calm authority, his voice dropping to a dangerous register as he informed Jake that I was under his protection now, and that coming near me again would be considered a personal insult. The implicit threat in those words sent chills down my spine. When he ended the call and handed my phone back, I found my courage and told him I didn't need his protection, that he could leave now and I would handle Jake myself. Something like amusement flickered in his dark eyes as he stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. He reminded me that I had texted him, invited him here, asked for his help. His next words were delivered with such absolute certainty that they seemed to rewrite reality around us. "You texted me, Mia Bennett. From now on, you're mine to protect." The rain continued its relentless assault against my windows as Dante settled himself on my couch with casual authority, as if my shabby furniture was a throne he had every right to occupy. One of his men had left to patrol outside while the other remained by the door, an imposing, silent sentinel. I perched nervously on the edge of my armchair, clutching a mug of tea I didn't remember making, trying to process the information Dante was sharing in his calm, measured voice. Jake, my unstable ex-boyfriend, had apparently been working for Dante for the past 6 months as a low-level associate, running errands and making deliveries for what Dante vaguely referred to as his family business. But Jake had been skimming money, stealing information, and selling it to rival organizations. As Dante spoke, I began to understand the gravity of my situation, the pieces falling into place with terrifying clarity. Dante Russo wasn't just some businessman. The way his man by the door deferred to him, the casual mentions of territory and associates, the absolute authority in his voice. He was talking about the Mafia, or whatever modern equivalent operated in our city. And he wasn't just part of it. The way he spoke, he was in charge. The head of the most powerful criminal organization in the city was sitting on my second-hand couch, offering me protection. I should have been more afraid, but something strange was happening to my fear. It was transforming, shifting into confusion, and most disturbingly, a reluctant sense of gratitude. Because while Dante was clearly dangerous, his danger wasn't directed at me. It was positioned between me and Jake, like a shield rather than a threat. Dante explained that Jake had been selling information to people who made him look merciful by comparison, people who wouldn't hesitate to use me as leverage against Jake if they thought I knew anything or could lead them to him. The irony that Jake had put me in danger while claiming to love me wasn't lost on me. Strangest of all was the growing sense of security I felt despite the circumstances. With Dante's men patrolling outside, Jake had driven away, vanishing into the rainy night. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wasn't jumping at every sound. The accidental text that had brought Dante Russo into my life had entangled me in something far bigger and more dangerous than my problems with Jake, yet I couldn't bring myself to wish it undone. As Dante finished explaining the situation, his dark eyes studying my face for my reaction, I realized I was nodding along as if this was all perfectly normal, as if having the head of a crime family in my living room discussing my protection was an everyday occurrence. The rational part of my brain knew I should be running, calling the police, doing anything but sitting here feeling almost safe in the presence of a man who radiated controlled violence. Yet something in Dante's steady gaze, in the absolute certainty of his promise to protect me, made me wonder if I had accidentally texted the one person who could actually keep me safe. I refused to leave my apartment despite Dante's insistence, stubbornly arguing that I could handle myself as I had for years before he appeared in my life. The rain had finally stopped, leaving behind a heavy silence broken only by the occasional drip from the gutters outside my window. I had just finished explaining that I couldn't possibly abandon my students mid-semester when the glass behind me exploded inward. Dante tackled me to the floor as 2 more shots shattered the remaining window, his body covering mine completely as glass rained down around us. Everything shifted into chaos and motion. His men were suddenly everywhere, weapons drawn, shouting into communication devices while Dante barked orders above me, his weight still shielding me from potential follow-up shots. "Get her essentials now," he commanded, his voice vibrating through his chest against my back. "We need to move." Strong hands pulled me up, guiding me to my bedroom where I frantically stuffed clothes into a backpack, grabbing my laptop, phone charger, and the small photograph of my parents. I was operating on pure adrenaline, my body moving while my mind struggled to process what was happening. Dante appeared in the doorway, his suit jacket gone, a gun now visible in a shoulder holster. "Time to go," he said, reaching for my arm and pulling me against his side as we moved toward the door. His men had formed a protective barrier around us, their bodies creating a human shield as we descended the stairs and emerged into the night. Dante kept me tucked against him, his arm like an iron band around my waist, his body constantly positioned between me and potential threats. The coordinated precision of their movements was terrifying and impressive, a well-rehearsed evacuation conducted with ruthless efficiency. In the back seat of the lead SUV, with Dante beside me and armed men in front and behind our vehicle, I finally found my voice, demanding answers through chattering teeth. The shock was setting in, making my whole body tremble despite the warm night air. Dante wrapped a cashmere coat around my shoulders before answering, his face illuminated by passing streetlights that carved shadows beneath his cheekbones. Those weren't Jake's people, he explained, his eyes constantly scanning our surroundings as we sped through the city. They were Bratva, Russian. They want what Jake stole, and they're using you to flush him out. When I asked why everyone suddenly thought I was so important, his answer sent chills down my spine. You're valuable now. To Jake as leverage, to his new associates as bait, and to me as, well, let's just say I don't like losing things that belong to me. I should have been outraged at his possessive tone, should have protested that I didn't belong to anyone. Instead, I found myself leaning slightly toward him, drawn to his commanding presence despite my fear. The car accelerated into the night, carrying me away from everything familiar and toward whatever dangerous new reality awaited at Dante's estate. Dawn was breaking as we passed through massive iron gates that parted silently before our convoy, revealing Dante's estate. Calling it a house would be like calling a hurricane a breeze. The modernist structure of glass and stone sprawled across manicured grounds, its angular design somehow both beautiful and intimidating. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter while discreet cameras tracked our approach. I counted at least 6 security checkpoints before we finally stopped at the main entrance, where Dante helped me from the car with unexpected gentleness. Inside, the luxury was understated but unmistakable, from the marble floors to the museum-quality artwork adorning the walls. An elegant older woman appeared as Dante guided me through the foyer, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a perfect chignon, her eyes assessing me with a kindness that seemed at odds with this fortress of masculine power. Sophia, Dante introduced her, his housekeeper, and according to him, the true ruler of his kingdom. The knowing smile she gave me as she showed me to my suite suggested she had welcomed other women in similar circumstances before me. The thought should have disturbed me more than it did. My room was larger than my entire apartment, with a bathroom that could have housed a family of 4 and a closet already filled with clothes in my size. I tried not to think about how Dante knew my measurements as I showered away the glass and plaster dust, changing into borrowed clothes that fit perfectly. Over the next several hours, I made it my mission to establish boundaries, insisting on calling my school to arrange a substitute, refusing Sophia's offer to unpack for me, and demanding information rather than accepting vague reassurances. Dante watched my small rebellions with something like amusement in his dark eyes, allowing me the illusion of control while making it clear with every subtle gesture that I was in his world now, playing by his rules. That afternoon, he called me to his study, a room lined with books and dominated by screens showing various areas of the estate. Without preamble, he showed me surveillance photos spread across his desk, images of Jake meeting with stone-faced men in expensive suits. Known members of the Bratva, Dante explained, dangerous beyond my comprehension. In one photo, Jake handed them what appeared to be a flash drive. In another, they examined documents bearing what I recognized with a sickening jolt as Dante family crest, the same symbol subtly incorporated into the estate's architecture. As the implications sank in, I realized the web I was caught in stretched far beyond my understanding, and that returning to my classroom, my apartment, my simple life might never be possible again. The thought should have devastated me, yet as I looked up to find Dante watching me with those intense dark eyes, I felt something unexpected beneath my fear, a forbidden thrill at being swept into his dangerous world, and the growing certainty that nowhere on earth would be safer than at his side. 3 days passed in a strange dance of tension and reluctant adaptation as I found my place in Dante's carefully controlled world. My suite became my sanctuary, but I gradually ventured further into the mansion, discovering spaces that revealed unexpected facets of the dangerous man who had claimed me as his to protect. The formal dining room where we shared meals, him at the head of a table built for 20, asking thoughtful questions about my teaching career. The state-of-the-art gym, where I accidentally stumbled upon him training with his men, his movements lethal and precise, his body a weapon honed to perfection. The gardens where I walked each morning, always aware of the guards watching from a respectful distance. But it was his private library that truly surprised me. A two-story haven of leather-bound first editions and comfortable reading nooks that spoke of a mind far more sophisticated than I had initially given him credit for. I found him there on the third night, reading Dostoevsky in the original Russian, and when he looked up at my entrance, something shifted between us. Our conversation about literature flowed easily into philosophy, politics, art, revealing an intelligence that matched his power. My hostility began to crack, giving way to something dangerously close to respect, as I witnessed not just his ruthlessness, but his unwavering code of honor, the care he showed to his staff, the loyalty he inspired in his men. When I demanded to know when I could return to my life, the argument that followed was heated, his control slipping for the first time as he paced the library like a caged predator. I accused him of keeping me prisoner for his own purposes, of using me as bait just like Jake would have. The pain that flashed across his face stopped my tirade cold. "I lost someone once because I failed to protect her," he confessed, his voice raw with an emotion I hadn't heard from him before. "I won't make that mistake again, not with you." The vulnerability in those words, from a man who radiated nothing but strength and control, reached something deep inside me. I moved toward him without conscious thought, my anger dissolving into an entirely different kind of tension. His eyes darkened as I approached, his breathing changing subtly as I stopped before him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. When his hand came up to brush my cheek, I didn't pull away, instead leaning into his touch as if my body had been waiting for it. His gaze dropped to my lips, his intention clear as he slowly bent toward me. The moment stretched between us, electric and inevitable, only to shatter as his phone rang with a harsh electronic tone. The call was brief, his expression shifting back to the controlled crime boss as he received news about Jake's location. As he strode from the library, already issuing orders to his men, I remained frozen in place, my heart racing not from fear, but from the realization that I was beginning to see beyond Dante's dangerous exterior to the complex man beneath, and worse, beginning to want him despite knowing exactly what he was. The morning after our near kiss in the library, I woke to discover my phone missing from its usual spot on the nightstand. After searching my suite with growing frustration, I decided to check Dante's office, thinking perhaps he'd confiscated it for security reasons. The door was unlocked, the room empty of its usual occupant, but filled with evidence of his true business. Security monitors displayed various areas of the estate, alongside what appeared to be warehouses and nightclubs. A wall safe stood open, revealing stacks of cash and several handguns. But what froze me in place was the sight of my phone connected to a laptop on his massive desk, the screen displaying text messages to Jake in what appeared to be my voice. Heart pounding, I scrolled through dozens of exchanges where Dante had been pretending to be me, drawing Jake out, arranging potential meetings, playing on his obsession. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, reopening all the fear and mistrust I had begun to set aside. I was just a pawn in whatever game Dante was playing with Jake and the Russians. The library conversation, the near kiss, all of it suddenly seemed calculated, a manipulation to ensure my cooperation. I was so absorbed in my discovery that I didn't hear him enter until his voice came from directly behind me, asking calmly what I was doing. I whirled to face him, anger and hurt making my voice shake as I confronted him with the evidence. To his credit, he didn't deny it, didn't try to justify or explain away his actions. Instead, he simply stated that everything he had done was for my protection, that he couldn't keep me completely safe until Jake was no longer a threat. His calm rationalization only fueled my anger. I accused him of using me as bait, of putting me at risk by antagonizing Jake further, of lying about his intentions from the beginning. Something flashed in his dark eyes then. Not anger, but what looked almost like hurt. He insisted he had never lied about protecting me, that everything else between us had been real, unexpected but genuine. I wanted to believe him, which only made me more determined to escape. I stormed from his office, ignoring his calls to stop, to let him explain. Back in my suite, I grabbed my backpack, stuffing it with essentials and the emergency cash I'd been hoarding since my arrival. The mansion was unusually quiet, most of Dante's men apparently deployed elsewhere, perhaps in response to whatever trap they'd set for Jake using my identity as bait. I made it through the main floor without encountering anyone except Sophia, who watched me with sad, knowing eyes, but made no move to stop me. Outside, I stuck to the gardens, using the carefully manicured hedges as cover as I worked my way toward the perimeter of the property. Freedom seemed within reach until I reached the main gate, where two guards intercepted me, their expressions apologetic but firm, as they escorted me back toward the mansion where Dante waited on the steps. His face a mask of controlled emotion that did nothing to hide the tension in his powerful frame. After my failed escape attempt, the atmosphere in the estate grew tense and electric, mirroring the violent thunderstorm that rolled in as evening approached. Dante had confined me to my suite while he prepared for a planned meeting with rivals, but I refused to remain passive any longer. Through my window, I watched lightning split the sky as rain lashed against the glass, the power throughout the estate flickering ominously. I was contemplating another escape when the first explosion shook the building, followed by gunfire and shouting. Within seconds, Sophia appeared at my door. Her usual composure fractured as she urged me to follow her to the safe room. We had barely reached the main staircase when the power failed completely, plunging the mansion into darkness, broken only by flashes of lightning and muzzle flare. Through the chaos, I saw them. Jake and several hard-faced men with Russian accents, somehow having breached the estate's security during the storm. I froze as Jake spotted me, his familiar face twisted into an expression I'd seen too many times before. Sophia pulled at my arm, but it was too late. Jake was already moving toward us, a gun in his hand. Dante appeared from nowhere, placing himself between us and Jake, his own weapon raised. The next moments blurred into fragments of violence and motion. Bullets splintered the banister beside me. Sophia was pulled to safety by one of Dante's men. Jake was shouting that he was trying to save me, that Dante was the real monster, that he'd been gathering evidence against the Russo family to protect me. In the middle of this chaos, I had a moment of perfect clarity, seeing the choice before me. I could use the distraction to flee, to disappear into the storm and never look back, or I could stay, could choose a side in this dangerous game. When Jake lunged forward, I made my decision, grabbing a heavy vase from a nearby table and swinging it with all my strength. It connected with the arm of one of Jake's Russian associates, sending his shot wild. The man turned toward me, rage contorting his features, but Dante was faster, tackling him to the ground even as Jake screamed that he was doing all this for me. I found my voice then, telling Jake what I'd needed to say for years, that he had never protected me, only controlled me, that at least Dante had been honest about his intentions from the start. The look of shock on Jake's face was quickly replaced by fury as he raised his weapon toward me, but again Dante intervened, throwing himself into the path of the bullet meant for me. The sound of reinforcements echoed through the mansion, Dante's men finally regaining control of the situation, subduing Jake and his associates. But all I could focus on was Dante crumpled on the marble floor, blood spreading across his white shirt, his eyes finding mine as I knelt beside him, my hands pressing desperately against his wound. 3 days after the attack, Dante was recovering in his massive bedroom, the gunshot wound in his shoulder healing well according to his private physician. Jake and his Russian associates had been dealt with, though I deliberately avoided asking for details, preferring ignorance about whatever fate had befallen my ex. I spent most of those days by Dante's bedside, our roles reversed as I tended to him, changing bandages and administering medication under Sophia's watchful guidance. The power dynamic between us had shifted subtly, his vulnerability giving me a strange new confidence, while my choice to help him during the attack seemed to have deepened his trust in me. Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows as I checked his dressing, our conversation turning unexpectedly serious when he admitted that what had begun as a strategic protection had evolved into something he hadn't anticipated. His dark eyes held mine as he confessed developing real feelings for me beyond his initial sense of ownership, feelings that had made him reckless during the confrontation with Jake. I sat on the edge of his bed, my heart racing as he told me that once he was fully recovered, I was free to return to my life if I wished. He would provide financial support to relocate anywhere I wanted, ensuring Jake or anyone connected to him could never find me again, maintaining protection from afar without interfering in my life. The offer of freedom hung between us, genuine and tempting, a chance to reclaim normalcy, to return to my students and my simple existence. Yet as I looked around the room that had become familiar, thought of the library where we'd nearly kissed, the gardens where I'd begun to find peace despite the circumstances, I realized the choice wasn't as clear as it should have been. In 1 week, Dante Russo had changed everything, showing me a world of danger and luxury, but also of loyalty, protection, and unexpected tenderness. When he asked what I wanted, the answer formed itself with surprising clarity. I wanted this, him, us, despite knowing exactly who and what he was. His expression remained carefully neutral as I explained my decision, only his eyes revealing his emotions until I finished speaking. Then he reached for my hand, asking why I would choose this life, this world, this man with all his darkness and danger. I leaned closer, my free hand gently touching his face, feeling the slight roughness of his morning stubble beneath my fingers. I texted the wrong number by mistake, I told him softly, but I think I found the right man. From now on, I'm yours by choice, not circumstance. The smile that transformed his face made him look younger, almost boyish in his joy, before he pulled me down into a kiss that held all the promise of the future stretching before us. A future neither of us could have imagined before one desperate text changed everything.